Narrative voice. The calm, measured tone of the narrator, especially in moments of emotional upheaval, adds gravity and impact. The contrast between inner chaos and external composure is striking. Characterization. Liam is portrayed with a mix of charm and malice that makes him feel real. Emma's duality, warm and seemingly loyal yet complicit in the affair, is subtle but effective. Pacing and structure. The gradual unraveling from suspicion to revelation to confrontation builds tension masterfully. The shift between past and present also works well to reveal motivations and backstory. Themes, identity, betrayal, resentment, and control are explored deeply, particularly through the lens of sibling rivalry. The metaphor of being a benchmark for Liam adds emotional complexity. Suggestions for improvement. Paragraph breaks. The story would benefit greatly from formatting. Large blocks of text are difficult to read. Breaking it into clearer paragraphs, especially around dialogue or scene shifts, would enhance readability. Show versus tell. While the emotional depth is powerful, some moments are heavily told rather than shown. For instance, moments like, "I wasn't going to let him walk away from this unscathed," could be illustrated through more dialogue or action. Endings. The story ends mid-sentence at, "Clara, listen, it's not rewrite. If you meant to continue, I'd be happy to help finish that confrontation." Scene or explore how the narrator moves forward. Not what it looks like? I couldn't help but laugh. A bitter, hollow sound that cut through the tension like a blade. The audacity. Liam shot me a glare, but it lacked bite. He knew he was cornered. There was no escape now. "Not what it looks like," Clara repeated, louder this time. Her voice carried across the room, even reaching Emma, who stood frozen in the corner, pale and silent. "You're in bed with your brother's wife, Liam. What part of this isn't what it looks like?" Liam opened his mouth, floundering for words. But Clara wasn't finished. "You're disgusting. Do you hear me? Disgusting. Don't come home. Don't even think about it. I'm done." The call ended with a sharp click. The silence that followed was suffocating. Liam stood motionless, phone still pressed to his ear like he could will her to call back. But she wouldn't. He knew it. I knew it. Emma finally found her voice. "Liam, I didn't mean for this to happen. Don't bother," I cut in coldly, my eyes locked on Liam. "Neither of you meant for this to happen, right? It just did. That's the story you're going with?" Liam turned to me, panic twisting into anger. "Why would you do this?" he demanded, voice shaking. "You could have talked to me. You didn't have to drag Clara into this." I stepped forward, voice dropping to something low and dangerous. "Why would I do this? You're standing in my house, in my bedroom, with my wife. And you're asking me why I exposed you? You don't get to make demands anymore." He tried to hold my gaze. Couldn't. His shoulders slumped and he sat on the bed like a man realizing the depth of his fall. "Clara's going to leave me," he muttered. "Good," I said flatly. "She deserves better." Emma stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Noah, please." Don't," I interrupted, not even looking at her. "Just don't. I don't want to hear it." She crumbled. I felt nothing. The room was thick with guilt and rage, heavy and unbearable. I had to get out. Turning to Liam, I said, "You need to leave. Now." He didn't move at first, still clinging to his phone like a lifeline. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem," I replied. "You made your bed." "Just not in mine." He finally stood, cast a helpless glance at Emma. Neither spoke as they shuffled out of the room. I followed them to the door, watching as Liam fumbled with his keys. "Oh, and Liam?" I called out. "Clara's smart. She'll make sure you lose. Everything? You might want to prepare for that." He didn't respond. just started the car and drove away. I stood in the doorway, mind racing. I didn't know what came next. I had no plan. But one thing was certain. Liam's smugness was gone. In its place, fear, regret. He wasn't in control anymore. I was, and I intended to keep it that way. When the door finally clicked shut behind them, the silence inside the house was crushing. I stared at the empty space they'd left behind, trying to process the storm inside me. Anger, betrayal, sadness, relief, strange mix. But the one thing I didn't feel was regret. Exposing them wasn't just right, it was necessary. I sank into the couch, body heavy with exhaustion. My phone buzzed, a message from Clara. "Thank you for telling me. I'll handle him from here." Short, direct, no wasted words. Clara would make sure Liam paid. That message confirmed what I already knew. His life was about to implode, and I'd be there to watch it fall. 2004. For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then I remembered the way he smirked, so sure of his victory, and any trace of sympathy vanished. That moment etched itself into my memory like a scar. I thought about calling my parents. They deserved to know, didn't they? But how do you even start a conversation like that? "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad. Guess what? Liam's been sleeping with my wife." No, I couldn't say it, not yet. This was a mess I needed to face alone. The hours crawled by. The house felt emptier than ever. I drifted into the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets without purpose. I wasn't hungry, I just needed to do something, anything to quiet my mind. But it kept playing the scene again and again. Each time it hurt more. Emma's betrayal cut deep. But Liam's, that was the knife twisted. He wasn't just my brother. He was my twin. We'd shared everything, birthdays, childhood memories, inside jokes. And now he'd thrown it all away. For what? A fling? A twisted competition he'd been waging against me our whole lives? I couldn't forget the look on his face when I walked in. That smirk. It wasn't just smug. It was triumphant. He wanted me to see. He wanted me to feel the full weight of what he'd done. And I did. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew I couldn't stay in that house another minute. It wasn't just the silence. It was the memories. Everywhere I looked, reminders of a life I thought was real. The dining table where Emma and I laughed over dinners. The couch where we binged our favorite shows. Even the bed, now tainted by their betrayal. I grabbed my keys and drove with no destination. Let the hum of the engine drown out the noise. In my head. Eventually, I found myself outside Clara's house. I hadn't meant to come here, but somehow it felt right. She opened the door with tired eyes and a clenched jaw. She didn't speak, just stepped aside. I followed her to the living room where she collapsed into a chair. "Do you want a drink?" she asked, voice flat. "Sure," I said. I didn't know if I needed whiskey or water. She brought wine. We drank in silence for a while. Finally, Clara spoke. "I always thought he might do something like this," she said, "but I never imagined it would be with her." I nodded, sipping. "I didn't think Liam could sink this low, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised." She gave a bitter laugh. "He's always been jealous of you, always trying to one-up you. I saw it." We talked for hours, filling in the gaps, piecing the story together. By the time I left, we weren't healed, but we were less alone. When I got back, the house was unchanged, but something inside me had shifted. A resolve was forming. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Liam and Emma had made their choices. Now they'd face the consequences. The next few days were a blur. Calls, paperwork, decisions. Divorce was inevitable. I called a lawyer the morning after the fallout. The meeting was cold, clinical. Talk of assets, evidence, custody. Thankfully, we had no kids. When I mentioned the video, the lawyer said it would make things swift. Emma didn't fight it. She looked resigned when I handed her the papers. "I deserve this," she whispered. For once, I agreed. She packed in silence. Every box she carried out felt like a small piece of closure. But Liam, he wasn't done. The phone calls came first. Dozens. "You ruined my life," he shouted when I finally picked up. "Why'd you send the video to Clara?" I hung up. He called again. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Noah. It just happened." "It just happened," I repeated, almost laughing. The audacity. I told him never to contact me again. When calls failed, he showed up in person. I didn't let him in. Instead, I met him on the porch. "What do you want, Liam? I need to talk to you, face to face." "There's nothing to talk about," I said coldly. "You made your choices. Now live with them." "Noah, please." I shut the door. Not out of anger. Out of self-preservation. Letting Liam in, even for a moment, was like inviting a snake into my home. Meanwhile, Clara wasn't pulling punches. She went after him in court. Alimony, assets, the house. And honestly, I was rooting for her. Our parents got involved. Devastated, but not surprised. "I always knew Liam was difficult," Mom said, her voice shaky. Dad was harsher. "He's dead to me. You don't do that to family." It should have felt good to have their support. It didn't. Emma stayed quiet, moved in with a friend. Occasionally, she'd send a message. "Apologies, please. I never," responded. What was the point? Thanks to the evidence, the divorce moved quickly. When it was finalized, I felt something like relief. Not happiness, but close. Clara and I stayed in touch. At first, it was about logistics. Later, it became something else. Shared stories, venting, dark humor. "They thought they were untouchable," she said once. "Now they've got nothing." Liam lost everything: his marriage, reputation, finances. Clara made sure of it. Emma didn't fare much better. A run-down apartment. A job she hated. As for me, I was rebuilding, piece by piece. The house was suffocating with its memories, so I made changes. I started in the bedroom. New bed, new curtains, new paint, not just redecorating, reclaiming. But healing isn't as easy as buying new furniture. Some nights I'd sit and replay it all in my head. Liam's smirk, Emma's face, Clara's fury. A loop I couldn't shut off. Still, Clara was there. We laughed sometimes, dry, bitter laughs, but it helped. "They have each other now," I once said. We both laughed again. There was no joy in it. Their relationship didn't last. The weight of their choices was too heavy. They argued, they broke, they lost. People saw Liam for who he really was. Emma faded into a shadow of who she used to be. But me? I survived. I found myself again, slowly, painfully. I threw myself into work, rediscovered old hobbies, reconnected with friends who reminded me of who I was before the betrayal. The wounds are still there. They'll take time, but they won't define me. I'm free. And that freedom? It was worth every scar. I used to drift through life, numbed by the aftermath of betrayal. But things began to shift when I started volunteering at a local shelter, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. That's where Clara came in. She became a meaningful part of that journey. Our shared pain created a quiet understanding between us, a bond built on wounds only we could truly recognize. At first, our conversations were about Liam and Emma, the ones who broke us. But over time, the focus shifted. We talked more about ourselves, our hopes, and the lives we wanted to build. One evening, as we walked through a quiet park, Clara said something that stayed with me. I used to think what they did would define me forever, like a black mark I could never wash away. But now I see it differently. They're just a chapter, not the whole story. She was right. Liam and Emma were part of my story, but they weren't the ending. Their betrayal had gutted me, yes, but it also cracked me open in ways that allowed me to grow. Eventually, the pain softened. It didn't vanish entirely, some wounds don't, but it stopped consuming me. I learned to laugh again, to find joy in the small moments, and to believe in the possibility of something better. As for Liam and Emma, they became distant echoes. Their lives unraveled. Liam bounced between jobs, his once celebrated charm hollow and ineffective. Emma, weighed down by guilt, faded into obscurity. Their relationship, built on lies, crumbled under its own weight. But that wasn't my burden anymore. I moved on. My days became lighter, my steps steadier. I wasn't defined by what they did. I reclaimed my story, and I wasn't going to let them write another word of it. Freedom. That's what I felt as I closed that chapter. Real, unfiltered freedom. For the first time in a long time, I was living for me. And for that, I was grateful. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning to carry it without letting it break me. Over time, the raw wounds became scars. Visible, yes, but no longer painful to the touch. I could breathe again without constantly questioning what was real. I threw myself into rebuilding, not just my life, but my identity. The house I had once shared with Emma felt like a tomb of old memories, so I transformed it. I replaced the furniture, painted over the past, and made it mine. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about ownership, about reclaiming who I was outside of her. My focus turned to things that mattered. I reconnected with old friends, revived forgotten hobbies, and began mentoring at a youth center. It felt good, right, to invest my energy in something honest, something untouched by betrayal. Clara remained a constant presence through all of it. What started as shared sorrow grew into a deep, genuine friendship. We stopped talking about Liam and Emma. They became footnotes, not focal points. Instead, we shared dreams, hopes, and laughter. Clara had a way of seeing the light, even after everything we'd endured. One evening, watching the sun dip below the trees, Clara said, "I used to think Liam's betrayal was the end of me, but now I see it was a beginning." She was right again. What Liam and Emma did didn't define me. It was just a page in a much larger book. I held the pen now. Their lives continued to fall apart, or so I heard. Liam struggled, Emma drifted. Their relationship collapsed without the thrill of secrecy to prop it up. Once, I might have felt a twisted satisfaction in that. But now, I just felt nothing. Their downfall was no longer my story to follow. My story was unfolding elsewhere, with purpose, with peace. My friendships deepened, my work thrived, and my days filled with genuine contentment. The scars remained, but they were reminders of how far I'd come. Clara and I stayed close. We understood each other in ways no one else could. Sometimes I wondered if our friendship would become something more, but I didn't rush it. I wanted to be sure that I was healed, sure I wasn't carrying old baggage into something new. One day, Clara looked at me and said, "You deserve to be happy, Noah. Truly happy. Don't let what they did hold you back." Her words stuck with me. I'd been surviving for so long that I'd forgotten to ask what happiness might actually look like. Slowly, I began to dream again, to imagine a future not built from pain but possibility. By the time I embraced this new chapter, Liam and Emma were long gone from my mind. I didn't know where they were, and I didn't care. Their choices shaped their lives. Mine shaped mine. And the difference was, I chose to rise. As I looked ahead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, not for perfection, but for something real. For love, for trust, for a life built on healing and growth. This was my story now, and I was finally ready to write the next chapter.